Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Shadow at Night, Thursday, April the 24th, 2025. Are you guys nervous at all about this election, maybe even a little bit frightened? And it's okay to be frightened. It's how we deal with that feeling that matters. I mean, we all feel fright. We all feel fear. We all feel trepidation and concern. I'm fearful of Mark Carney winning on Monday. I'm fearful because all of that same stuff that Justin Trudeau was trying to unroll on us, the censorship, all of it, the electric car mandate by 2035, the carbon tax, all of it is going to start happening, and it's going to start happening on steroids very, very, very quickly. So the CBC broke a story today. Are you guys familiar with the Carney is lying story? Have you been following that today? Let me know in the comments, because I need to know how detailed I need to be when I break this down for you, because I believe the CBC is in cahoots with the Liberal Party of Canada to try and bring 51st state up again just days before we go to the polls. Even though there was a record amount of advance votes last weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 7.2 million, breaking records by 25%. Elections Canada says, I think the Liberals, they're desperate, or they need to make sure they win this thing. And so they're in cahoots with the CBC. And why wouldn't the CBC cooperate with them in this way? Their funding is on the line here. $1.4 billion, maybe more. Maybe a chance at being enshrined in Canadian law so they can never, ever be erased or defunded, ever. That's what Carney has promised. Poilievre wants to get rid of the CBC, or at least defund the CBC, except for Radio Canada, who incidentally are the ones who broke this story today. So have you guys been following this? Looks like you have been. Hello, Carol and Calvin and Sue and Barb and Leslie and Lise and Daniel, Brita, Kathy from Nova Scotia. How are you doing? Pierre Poilievre was in Nova Scotia last night and early this morning. He's in Saskatoon tonight. Did you go see him? Hopefully you went to that rally. We've got some video of that coming up a little bit later on in the show. And speaking of the Pierre Poilievre Saskatoon rally, the pleb flew there, I think, hopefully on his own dime. You know the pleb from X, right? And I think on YouTube as well. So he's in Saskatoon. He's talking to people in line. Somehow my name comes up because I got kicked out of that Winnipeg conservative rally a month ago or so. And the woman who was explaining it to him, this is what I get from one of our viewers, so I don't know exactly. I haven't seen it for myself. But the woman explaining it to him says, well, he's a PPC supporter. Okay, so in normal circumstances, in normal times, that's the platform I agree with the most. The PPC. And if this were a normal election where our futures were not on the line, I would probably vote PPC. It was even talked about behind closed doors that I should run for the PPC. That was months and months ago. Maybe not months and months, just months. But I'm never going to run for political office. That's not my thing. My thing is here with you guys doing this. So yeah, I probably would support the PPC under normal circumstances. But right now, man, the house is on fire. We got to put it out first before we can move forward with everything we want. We need to be able to be satisfied with most of what we want and still some of what we don't want right now. And then what happens in the next 4 years, we, the people, get to decide. So whatever platform you're watching on tonight, whether it's Facebook or whether it's X or whether it's Twitch or YouTube, shadowdavis.com. If you're an all access member, I have some treats for you guys tonight, and part 2 of 2073, and the winner of either the Shadow at Night hat or the Shadow at Night mug. So maybe it's you. We'll announce that winner in the extension tonight. Patricia0711's watching on Rumble. Rico Suarez, Starliner 1961. Riznan, hey Riznan, how you doing? White Grub 12, World Peace, Notable, Uniacke. The gang's all here on Rumble tonight. So whatever platform you're watching on, don't forget to like and share. Get this out to as many people as you possibly can. Shadow at Night live stream, as always, is brought to you by CanadaNanoSilver.com.
Crest toothpaste to SilverCeuticals toothpaste. First, we're starting out with Crest. It's a classic, it's an original. It's what I've used most of my life. But that being said, it does have its problems. First off, the consistency is so weird and thick, and I get it's a paste, but it really doesn't spread that well. And I must also say that I'm not in love with the taste. I get toothpaste isn't supposed to taste good, but why shouldn't it? But that being said, it does get the job done. Next, we have SilverCeuticals. They have 3 flavors, but today we're going with Bubbleberry. And already it smells so good. So I'm excited to see what this tastes like. The consistency is also a lot smoother, and I must say it spreads way nicer in your mouth.
This literally tastes like fruit bubblegum.
Yeah, this toothpaste was pretty good. I actually went in for seconds, and it's infused with nano silver, so it helps remineralize your teeth and keep them fresh throughout the day.
100% go with SilverCeuticals.
And here's the results. What's your favorite toothpaste?
CanadaNanoSilver.com, of course. No fluoride, man. No fluoride in that stuff either. Bubbleberry, cinnamon, spearmint. Call today for more information. Kevin and Anna are available. You saw the number on the screen there, or just go to the website and make an email in the contact tab there, CanadaNanoSilver.com. That is CanadaNanoSilver.com. Okay, so this whole thing about Carney lying this morning, CBC-Radio Canada breaks it, according to sources, and we're going to get into that in just a second. But I believe this whole thing started a couple of weeks ago. Remember? That CBC reporter Katie Simpson somehow was in the White House asking Donald Trump questions. And it seemed as though she was trying very hard to get him to say something about the 51st state so she could take that back to Canada and scare the bejesus out of all the old boomers out there. And by the way, I want to take an aside here. People, some boomers who watch this show say, please stop saying boomers. I'm not one of them. You know who I mean when I say it. Obviously, I'm not talking about you, right? So anyway, here's that clip. Again, CBC reporter Katie Simpson trying to get Trump or the White House press secretary to talk about 51st state.
President Trump's tone when it comes to Canada-U.S. relations, Canadians have noticed it's shifted a bit in the past few weeks. Ever since the election campaign started, he stopped talking about Canada becoming the 51st state, at least publicly. I'm wondering if that's on purpose and why.
I would reject the president's position on Canada has shifted. Perhaps he just hasn't been asked about Canada by questions from this group in the Oval Office, but they see him almost every day. But the president still maintains his position on Canada. The United States has been subsidizing Canada's national defense, and he believes that Canadians would benefit greatly from becoming the 51st state of the United States of America.
Okay, you guys remember that, right? So all the talk today from all of the left-wing corporate media in Canada was the remarks that Donald Trump made yesterday afternoon during one of his open White House press conferences. And somebody asked him about Canada. I'm not sure who it was. But he went into his preamble about Canada, 51st state. We don't buy from them. We don't need anything from them. All of that stuff. The same stuff that he's been saying now for the past, 4 months it's been. You tell me if you notice anything new, aside from what he says about Mark Carney. And he doesn't even mention him by name, by the way. But you tell me if you see anything new that Trump says in this press conference yesterday. It's 3 minutes.
Canada has an election coming up. Do you have a prediction for that? And what do you think the results of
with respect to Canada?
With the negotiations?
Oh, I don't want to predict other nations' elections. It's tough enough doing this one. Look, I love the Canadian people. I like Canada. But it's costing us $200 billion a year to support Canada. $200 billion. And I say, why are we doing that? You know what? We can make our own cars. We have more energy than they do. We have more energy than anybody in the world. We don't need their lumber, obviously. We have more lumber. We have a lot of lumber. We have a lot of everything that they sell us. But in particular, cars, they took a large percentage of the car making, and I want to bring it back to this country. I really don't want cars from Canada. So when I put tariffs on Canada, they're paying 25%, but that could go up in terms of cars. When we put tariffs on, all we're doing is we're saying we don't want your cars in all due respect. We want really to make our own cars, which is at the same time I want to help Canada. I have spoken to the current Prime Minister. He was very, very nice, I will say. Very nice. We had a couple of very nice conversations, very good. But I don't think it's appropriate for me to get involved in their election. To put it bluntly, we want to make our own cars, and we're now equipped to do that. They took a lot of our car business. Mexico, too, took a lot of our car business. We want to make the cars here. I'm running this country. I'm not running Canada. And that's why I asked Trudeau, who I call Governor Trudeau affectionately, but I asked him, why are we spending $200 billion to support Canada, to subsidize Canada? And he was unable to answer the question. I mean, why are we doing that? And I have to be honest, as a state, it works great. As a nation, considering the fact that most of the nation, 95% of Canada, what they do is they buy from us and they sell to us. They sell to us. If we didn't buy their oil, if we didn't buy and we don't need their oil. We have more oil than anyone, but we don't need their oil. We don't need their lumber. We don't need their cars. We don't need anything. So I said, why are we doing this? Why are we spending $200 billion? It doesn't make sense. If we needed something, that would be a different subject. So I'm working well with Canada. We're doing very well. We're working on a deal. We'll see what happens. But
with who?
Again, why, representing this country, why are we spending $200 billion to support and subsidize another country? Because if they didn't have us, and if we didn't spend that money, as Trudeau told me, they would cease to exist. He said that to me. They would cease to exist, which is true, certainly as a country.
Okay, so was there anything new there that needs reporting? Did he say anything he hasn't been saying for the last 4 months? Did you pick anything up that I missed? Maybe. I'm looking at the comments right now. Bob says no. He says we're working on a deal. I don't think they are. Working on a deal with who? Everybody who could make that deal right now is otherwise occupied, running for their seat, knocking on doors, having town hall meetings, doing rallies all over the country. They haven't got time to be negotiating right now. So I don't know who he'd be working on this deal with. Anyway, let's leave that there. I've laid that out already. So Katie Simpson from the CBC tries to gin it up a couple of weeks ago, and then Trump goes ahead and answers that question, the same answer he's been giving over and over and over and over again for the last 4 months. So this morning, Trump mentioned 51st state during call with Carney. Sources tell Radio Canada. Sources? What sources? Oh, you don't have to name your sources, which means it could be anybody saying anything. Let's go with that. Yeah. We'll protect our sources because we're real journalists, which is absolute crap, mind you. So, sources, I reiterate, tell CBC-Radio Canada this morning that, in fact, Trump did say on March 28th on his phone call with Mark Carney, 51st state, what do you think of that? Even though Mark Carney, when he reported back about that call, didn't mention that at all. So apparently now Mark Carney is lying. And right-wing independent media, Rebel News, Western Standard, Juno News, they all went, oh, Carney caught in a lie. But wait a minute. Hold on just a second. Let's watch the bumbling, stumbling admission from Mark Carney this morning, admitting that he said, or that he lied and didn't mention 51st state. So watch this.
Didn't President Trump bring up the idea of Canada becoming the 51st state during that call with you?
As I just said, the president brings this up all the time. He brought it up yesterday. He's brought it up before. There's a difference between the conversation that was held between leaders of government, which was this conversation, and a discussion that led directly to an agreement that as sovereign countries we would have negotiations about our partnership following the election on Monday. That's what the President and I agreed. That's what both of us reported back. And that's what I'm ready to do. And what's at stake in this election is how well we come together as a country for those difficult discussions with the Americans. And to be clear, you know, I have said well before that call, and virtually every...
Guys, this is a 3-minute answer. 3 minutes it takes him to answer that one simple question.
time that I've spoken since that call, that President Trump, the Americans, want to break us so they can own us. Those aren't just words. That's what's at risk.
It's a crisis.
That's why we have to build Canada strong. That's why we have to go hard. That's why we have to negotiate properly. That's not why we have to build outside options. That's why we have the plan that we do.
I asked you about this on March 28th after the call, and you said that President Trump respected Canada's sovereignty both privately and in his public conversations.
He did.
Were you being truthful?
He absolutely did. He absolutely did. Look, the President has certain things in his mind that he reverts back to all the time. But treated me as the Prime Minister, not as something else. I'm not even going to say the word he used to use about my predecessor. Treated me as the Prime Minister. We had discussions as sovereign nations. We agreed as sovereign nations that these negotiations will begin after the election on Monday. And that is how it was reported back, and that's absolutely accurate. So that's the treatment. Now, look, the President says lots of things, but the essence of the discussion and where we moved the conversation to was exactly what I said. Treated us with respect as a sovereign nation. We have these negotiations coming, and that's, just to be clear, that is what's at stake. Both things are true. The desire...
I can just imagine the CBC reporter, and Carney hasn't picked up on this yet, the CBC reporter looking at him going, say it, say it, say it. It's going to work out for you. Say it, say it. Let's continue.
Of the Americans and the President to own us. Those aren't just words. That's a desire. And the ability of Canada to stand strong, build our own, control our destiny, and in that context, as a sovereign nation, have those discussions.
Look, the President says lots of things. Basically, yes, there's the admission. Trump wants us to be the 51st state. Does that mean that there are troops massing on the border? Of course not. He's also said that it won't be through military strength, and some ridiculous reporters have asked Pierre Poilievre questions like, would you spruce our military up so we can fight back against the United States if need be? What kind of ridiculous question is that? It would take us 20 years to even come close, if we ever could, to get a military that would rival what the United States could throw at us. If the United States wanted to come in and take over Canada, they could do it inside of a day, literally. So anyway, after that Mark Carney rambling admission this morning, all of the news media, right and left, were all over it. Carney caught misleading Canadians about Trump call. Liberal leader Mark Carney was called out for misrepresenting his discussion with President Trump after sources say their phone call involved further talk of Canada becoming the 51st state. All the other leaders were all over it. Here's Yves-Francois Blanchette from the Bloc Québécois.
Bonjour, M. Blanchette, Canadian CBC. I seem to recall that you had initially described that phone call between Mr. Trump and Mr. Carney as somewhat positive. What's your reaction now that you understand that Mr. Carney may not have disclosed everything from the call, that Donald Trump did in fact refer to the 51st state threats again?
It seems more and more to have been a stunt. He wanted to make a statement. I am Mark Carney. I'm the best of them all. I'm a great negotiator. I have managed crisis in the past. I would change the world. Trust me. And it appears that it never happened. That the call was not what has been described afterwards. that there was no agreement, no support for Canada's sovereignty, no beginning for a deal, just the show of a man who wanted to pretend something which appears today not to be true. I believe many people in Canada and in Quebec will say, what the hell is that? And if that is not true, what else is not true?
Well, that's a very good point, Yves Francois, because he's been lying about a lot of stuff. And in the past month, he's been called out on many of his lies. And so far, it seems to be bouncing off him quite easily. Apparently, still got 39 or 40% in the polls. Still got a chance of forming a minority or majority government. A chance. So that doesn't seem to be working so well, because the main thing on people's minds, and the CBC knows this, the main thing on people's minds who are voting Liberal or thinking about voting Liberal is the 51st state threat from Donald Trump. Donald Trump, bad, orange man. Elbows up. We got to get out there, protect our sovereignty. Vote Carney, because he's perceived as the best man for that job, to deal with Donald Trump. Somehow. I don't know why. Here's another leader who was calling Carney out in Winnipeg today, Jagmeet Singh.
Learned that Mark Carney wasn't being totally straight up with us when he told us what happened with his first phone call with Donald Trump. He said that Donald Trump respected our sovereignty. Now it's come out that he instead actually brought back up the 51st state and again threatened our country in that call. I'm worried, I think as a lot of Canadians are worried, that if Mark Carney's not being straight up with us, he's not going to be straight up with us in the negotiations. And workers are worried about what's going to be on the table. You know, workers and working people should be at the negotiating table, not on the table. And we're worried about what Mark Carney's willing to give up, what he's willing to concede. And so we've got a message today that you need to elect New Democrats. One, to make sure that this process is transparent. We're going to fight to make sure Canadians know what's at stake, what the impact is before a vote comes to Parliament.
Mark Carney lied. He wasn't being straight up with us, Jagmeet Singh says. By the way, Jagmeet Singh also said this today.
A lot about what your offer is. Can you tell us what your red lines would be if there is a minority government and the Liberals are the party with the most seats in the House? What are the non-negotiable things from your platform that you would tell Mark Carney, if you want to remain Prime Minister, these are the things you need to do?
Well, we laid out some of these priorities already in one of our announcements, but I can lay them out again. The key priorities we have that we need to see action on in this next budget is that we cannot have any cuts to our health care. We're not going to stand for any cuts to health care. That's just not allowed. You can't cut health care in a time of a health care crisis. Like here in Alberta, people are going through a healthcare crisis. Imagine how much worse that would be with over $28 billion in cuts at the federal level. I mean, that would be devastating to our healthcare. What would that mean to nurses and doctors and family physicians where there's already such a shortage? So no cuts to health.
Healthcare is a provincial jurisdiction. Federal government gives health transfers to the provinces and they decide what to do with it. So it shouldn't even be on the table for discussion in any kind of federal election campaign. But there is Jagmeet Singh already talking about making a deal with Mark Carney should they form a minority government. But 5 minutes before that, what was he saying? Oh, you lied. It wasn't straight up with us. The guy's a two-face, like that Seinfeld episode. She's a two-face. That's Jagmeet Singh. And I'll tell you right now, if his party is, in fact, at 6%, and if they get 6 or 7 seats below party status in the House of Commons, Jagmeet Singh will not be the leader of the NDP for very much longer. And my prediction has been for, I'm going to say a year now, the next leader of the federal NDP will be Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew, which will actually be good if we can last that long as a country going forward. And the reason it would be good, because he would bring voters back to the NDP. Even though he's a Marxist, He's got a certain charm about him, kind of like Justin Trudeau, that would attract NDP voters and once again split that left vote. Right now, the left vote is primarily with the Liberals. But if you can get the Liberals and the NDP to split that vote, that means Conservatives win. But in 4 years' time, it probably won't matter so much. Pierre Poilievre was in Halifax last night. Another rally, I think an airplane hangar, maybe a warehouse. I don't know. We're hearing reports of another 5,000 or 6,000 people. And they sang Air Canada. Oh, Canada. Sheila Copps, by the way, on X today was very upset that they didn't get the words right. We changed the words 10 years ago. Here it is.
Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all our sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
All right, so I'm not going to say 6,000 people. I mean, they said 6,000. I would say that's maybe 3,000, maybe 4,000 from my eyeball. But the Liberals are now also trying to say that Mark Carney, he was on Vancouver Island yesterday, I believe, doing a rally. And, oh, my God, thousands of people turned out to see Mark Carney. Yeah, right. Mark Carney's in Winnipeg today, same as Jagmeet Singh. And Mark Carney is having a rally tonight. I'll tell you where it is in just a second and how many people it holds. Pierre Poilievre was asked this morning by CBC-Radio Canada about Mark Carney's lie, and I think he handled this probably the best of them all. He didn't make too much of it.
We will now go to the final question.
Bonjour, Rémi. Émilie Descoteaux, Radio-Canada.
Hello, Radio-Canada.
On a appris que le président
We
américain
learned
avait
that the
parlé
U.S.
du
President
51e État
did
dans
talk
son
about the
appel avec Mark
51st
Carney,
state in his
alors
call
que
with
le
Mark
Premier ministre
Carney,
avait pourtant
although
dit
the
que Trump
Prime
avait
Minister
respecté
said
la
that
souveraineté du
the
Canada
President
lors
had
de la
respected
Comment vous
Canada's
interprétez ça?
sovereignty during that call. How do you interpret that?
Well, that's a question for Mr. Carney to answer. I wasn't there. But what's clear is we will stand up for our sovereignty. We will never be an American state, and we will focus on what we can control, which is to reverse the disastrous liberal economic policies that Mark Carney advised Justin Trudeau to take, which have driven up the cost of living and driven our jobs south. My approach is to bring change. Change by cutting bureaucracy, taxes, and bringing down the cost of living. Change by unleashing the construction of new homes and Canadian resources to bring back the $500 billion that Liberals pushed south. Change so that Canadians can create jobs here at home. My plan will cut taxes on work, investment, home building, and energy so that we can unleash production and powerful paychecks and stand up for our country from a position of strength for a change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes today's press conference.
Yeah, so again, like I said to you last week probably and earlier this week, the polls show that the fear is driving the Liberals. People are voting for Liberals based on fear, and they're voting for Conservatives based upon hope. And that's how it's really shaking out going into this last weekend. Is I'm sure there's still some fence sitters out there. I'm not sure how many, probably not as many as normal. But there's still some out there, and they're going, what am I going to choose? Am I going to choose Project Fear? Or am I going to choose hope for a better future for myself, for my children? That's not a tough call when you actually sit down and think about it for 30 seconds. Getting back to the CBC for a second, you guys see my point here? Do you see the CBC driving hard at trying to bring back that 51st state rhetoric, anything they could think of? And they were probably working behind closed doors with Gerald Butts and Katie Telford and all of Trudeau's old crew to come up with something they could do to make Trump's 51st state threats newsworthy again. Mark Carney, did you lie about your March 28th phone call? Did he say that? He always says things like that. 3-minute rambling answer. Finally admits, yeah, he brought it up. So what? Who cares? It doesn't matter because the president says things all the time. But the CBC, oh yeah, that's a big story for them because they're a threat. They're going to lose their 1.4 billion, 1.5, whatever, 1.3. They just got an extra $150 million at the beginning of this month. So 1.5, I would say, 1.5 billion of our tax dollars goes for this crap here. Watch this. This is funny.
Show you another incident that happened today with the media and with the Conservative campaign. We've talked about this throughout this election, the way they've been handling them. And I don't mean like sort of figuratively, I mean literally, like touching them. There was a moment today that we want to show you. A reporter, our colleague Abigail Beeman with CTV, tried to ask Rob Batherson, a Conservative candidate in Halifax West. He's also a former president of the party. She tried to ask him a question. Just take a look at what happened.
Sorry, guys, we are just going to hold today.
Mr. Batherson, don't push me, Riley. Mr. Batherson, can we chat with you for a minute? Mr. Batherson?
Thank you very much.
Are you gesturing to us or to the party? Can we ask you a couple questions, Mr. Batherson, about the race in the Atlantic? Mr. Batherson, do you have any comments on Trump's new comments about Canada's sovereignty? Please don't push me, Riley. Please don't. You're literally pushing me. Please don't push me. Please don't push me. Mr. Batherson, do you have a minute for the cameras, please? Mr. Batherson, do you have any comments on Trump's new comments about Canada's sovereignty or the new auto threat since we're standing in a car?
Do you see any pushing?
Sorry, guys, we are just
Where's the pushing?
Mr. Batherson, don't push me, Riley.
Where's the push?
Mr. Batherson, can we chat with you for a minute? Mr. Batherson?
Thank you very much.
He's holding her back, but not even holding her. It's not pushing
Can
her.
we ask you a couple questions, Mr. Batherson, about the race in the Atlantic? Mr. Batherson, do you have any comments on Trump's new comments about Canada's sovereignty? Please don't push me, Riley. Please don't. You're literally pushing me. Please don't push me. Please don't push me. Mr. Batherson, do you have a minute?
He's standing in front of you. He's not pushing you.
Mr. Batherson, do you have any comments on Trump's new comments about Canada's sovereignty or the new auto threat since we're standing in a car dealership?
That is how spoiled and thin-skinned the left-wing corporate media is. They live in a completely different stratosphere than we do. You know what? When we sit here and we say, wow, like they're lying. How do they live with themselves? How do they sleep at night? How do they look in the mirror? It's not a lie. Speaking of Seinfeld references, if you believe it, that was George Costanza. They actually believe that they are the chosen ones, that they are anointed somehow to bring Canadians the news. And forget all those peasants, all those right-wing extremist peasants who work for websites, independent websites, scrounging for money all the time. This is Bob Fife, who is the chief Ottawa correspondent for the Globe and Mail, a guy I used to like. Watch what he says here. This is from CBC the other night.
Not journalists. No. These are right-wing agitators. Yeah. And they what they do is they use these kind of activity, stunts and antics to raise money. Mm-hmm. We've seen these people chase down Liberal politicians or NDP politicians, screaming in their faces, and then they try to raise money off of it. But when they go to deal with Mr. Poilievre, they're like little puppy dogs. Hello, Mr. Poilievre, very nicely. And it's, it is a disgrace to have these people pretend that they're journalists. We all work for different organizations. Some of ours may have editorials maybe lean to the right or to the left or in the middle. But the journalists themselves conduct themselves honorably and try to be as fair as they possibly can.
Don't push me, Corey.
These are not journalists. These
Don't push
are people who are political partisans who try to raise money off of because of what they're doing with their right-wing antics. That's simple it is.
You, Bob, are a political partisan, but you just don't know it. Isn't that astounding? And that, my friends, that little speech there from Robert Fife of the Globe and Mail is how they all feel. That's how they all feel about Rebel. That's how they all feel about Juno. That's how they all feel about Western Standard. That's how they all feel about me. And that's how they all feel about you. Champagne socialists, love them. College professors teaching critical theory, love them. Hardworking Canadians trying to get by, whatever. Scumbags. You probably watch Rebel News. That's who they are. And that will be the end of them. Now, David Cochrane on CBC was suggesting that that was a CTV reporter who got pushed. I didn't see any pushing, but whatever. CTV is scared as well. They're going to lose their funding. Globe and Mail is scared. They're going to lose their funding. Poilievre is going to take away that big media trough. And they're all going to have to go out there and they're all going to have to earn their own keep. And if they can't, guess what? See ya. Well, they're all trying to raise money. Well, that's because they don't take government funding, Bob. They've got to keep going. And so, yes, they take funding from their viewers, much like you will be soon, CBC. You're going to be like PBS in the United States, doing special Sunday night programming once a month. And if you enjoy the programming on our station, then please consider buying the gold package of $25 a month support. You'll get a beautiful T-shirt in the mail. Okay, I mentioned that Jagmeet Singh was in Winnipeg today, and Mark Carney is also in Winnipeg today. He was having a rally tonight at a place called the Pyramid Cabaret. It's in downtown. It's a great venue for concerts. I think I've seen, I don't know, so many great bands there, but before they were famous, right? Like Crash Test Dummies. Crash Test Dummies, as a matter of fact, I think they used to be the house band there before they were a band. Who else did I see? It doesn't matter. The bottom line is it's about 300 people comfortably. Maybe you can get 25 more in there, but maybe 300, 325. That's it. That's the maximum amount of people that you can get into that place. And that's where Mark Carney is having his rally today. Jagmeet Singh, a friend of mine, saw him at a parking lot today holding a press conference with 24 people. And those were the people who were standing behind him from those clips we saw earlier. So anyway, Winnipeg is a battleground between the NDP, the Liberals, and the Conservatives. And there's one riding in particular, Transcona Elmwood, it's called, that always goes back and forth, mostly NDP, but sometimes Conservative. So there's a probe poll done for the Winnipeg Free Press, surveying a representative sample of 800 Manitoba adults online from April 8th to 14th. So this is the most recent. Because it wasn't a random sample of voters, no margin of error can be given, but a random poll of that size would have a margin of error of about 3.5 percentage points, 19 times out of 20. And it suggests that Mark Carney and the Liberals are viewed as best suited to address Canada-U.S. relations and the economy. But Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are seen as best able to handle pocketbook issues. Wouldn't that be the economy? Pocketbook issues, public safety, and taxation. So the question that we have to be asking ourselves is, what are people going to vote on Monday? What is top of mind? And that's what CBC was trying to do. They were trying to bring back the 51st state rhetoric because all the polls showed that that's what people were voting on. That's what they were most concerned about. Not the crime, not the drugs, not the overspending, not the taxation, not men and women's locker rooms, none of that stuff. Not climate change, not carbon tax. It's Trump. It's amazing to me that people can be so stupid when you've got the things that you need to get taken care of that are seen by people as the Conservatives handling the best, like pocketbook issues, public safety, taxation, that kind of thing. Those are important things. not who can handle U.S. relations. It's always going to work out with the U.S. It always has. It always will. The economy, how is Mark Carney seen as best able to handle the economy? He has tanked at least 2, England, Canada. The poll goes on to suggest NDP support in Manitoba has rebounded over the past few weeks from a low of 9% in March to 15% today, and the party may be in a stronger position to defend its 3 seats in the province. Singh said healthcare, environmental regulations, labor treaty rights must be kept off the table when new trade talks begin in Washington, blah, 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 blah. So many of the pollsters are calling for Manitoba's usually, you know, I don't blame anybody in Alberta and Saskatchewan for pointing fingers at Manitoba and saying, we don't need your NDP BS over here. I don't blame you for saying that because that's the way it is here. The problem is that Manitoba is a province of 1.5 million people, and 1 million of them live in Winnipeg, which is known to be an NDP kind of city. Going back 100 years, over 100 years, the Winnipeg General Strike. That was, generationally speaking, that's the way Winnipeg is. It goes blue sometimes as well. Sometimes it goes orange. It depends on the flow of the country. For example, the riding I'm in right now is what we call a bellwether riding, right? It can predict pretty much who is going to win the election or if a minority government is formed. So right now there's a Conservative who is elected in this particular riding. Generally, that means it's going to be a Liberal minority or a Conservative majority. But if there's a Liberal elected in this riding, it's a Liberal majority every single time. And there's other ridings like that across the country as well. I think Michelle Ferrari's riding is like that. What is that one? Peterborough? Yeah, that's the same kind of thing. So there are certain things to look at as we're watching the election coverage on Monday night. And by the way, we will be starting. There's no show tomorrow night here. I'm going to do an election special on Monday night. We're going to be on probably for about 3 hours covering it all. So I'm going to start an hour early on Monday night, 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern, and we're going to roll right through until we've got a winner of the election. So at about 7 o'clock my time on Monday, the polls will be closed and we'll start getting reports from Atlantic Canada, and then it's going to swing east to west, and we'll take you all through that night. And if you guys want to see what's going on in your particular riding, just throw it into the comments on Monday night, and I will, if I see your comment, I'll go ahead and look for it because, yeah, we need to watch this together. I think it's a big election watch party, and I know that many of us are concerned, so I think it's better that we watch it all together. Let's get back to what's going on here. So never mind this one. We covered that story, and Manitoba, it's probably going to be, depending on who wins the election, 14 seats in Manitoba, probably 8 go Conservative, 5 Liberal or 4, and then 2 NDP. That sounds about right to me. Poilievre vows to scrap the Liberal electric vehicle mandate, said at a Halifax car dealership this morning. So if you'll recall, the Liberals brought in this mandate that by 2035, there will be no gas-powered vehicles allowed to be sold in Canada. If you have one at that time, if you still drive a gas-powered vehicle at 2035, then you'll be allowed to keep it. They're not going to come and take it, tow it out of your driveway or anything like that. But you won't be able to buy a new gas-powered vehicle at 2035. So Poilievre says he's going to scrap that. What does Mark Carney say? Well, he hasn't said anything about it in the campaign, but he has said things about net zero and electric car mandates and carbon taxes before. Watch this.
Price to $100 a ton overnight. But if you're layering in a gradual increase, if you have it legislated as we're going to have in Canada, for example, to 170, if you're building a track record in terms of, let's say, the auto sector, like the Europeans and Germans and others saying, okay, no new internal combustion engine vehicles by 2030 and supported policies around that. Well, hey, surprise, surprise, the market will pull forward the future. We'll start adjusting now. And then by the time you get to the future, the adjustment is quite straightforward. And so those are all the mechanisms you use.
Mechanisms you use. So it's interesting, this neo-Marxism. It's not telling the people directly what they can and can't do. And this is the way it's been going. It's this public-private partnership thing that Klaus Schwab yapped about in the Fourth Industrial Revolution and the Great Reset, which, by the way, Mark Carney was one of the architects of. You can read about that in his book, Values, by the way. It's about governments telling large corporations what to do. And then the large corporations doing it. Or maybe it's not even governments. It probably comes from the large investment firms in the World Bank and the IMF. Places like that, right? And then it goes down to the investment firms, and it obviously all washes through the World Economic Forum and the Bilderbergs and Trilateral Commission and all of the hoi pollois who run the world. But eventually it cycles down to the large corporations, and they say, you will only make electric cars from now on. And they say, okay, well, what's my subsidy? We'll give you $5 billion. You can start now and you won't need that money anymore. So the government is picking corporations, picking companies to do these things. Everybody else is going to just get left by the wayside if they're not into the ESG nonsense. Right? And then that trickles down to us, because when the corporations make things, cars, fridges, stoves, toys, whatever, it's all going to be green. And that's the only thing we'll have a choice to buy. You see what I'm saying? So they'll and they're doing it slowly. As Carney said in that last clip, they're going to do it slowly so as we don't notice. You can't do it suddenly. People will rebel. They'll revolt. It's got to be rolled out slowly. And that's what they're doing. The housing thing, same situation. They'll get used to living in modular homes slowly. They'll forget they want a large property outside of the city. They'll forget they want an acreage outside of the city where they can ride horses or do whatever. They'll forget about saving money for a dream one day, great car or a vacation to Mexico or France or wherever, Australia, wherever you wanted to go. They'll forget about all of that stuff eventually because it's going to be a slow trickle, the frog in the pot. That's what it is. The Americans are standing up against it, though. Here is Scott Bessent. Watch what he says. He is the Secretary of the Treasury in the U.S., and he's telling the IMF to get away from this ESG nonsense. Watch.
First, we must make the IMF again. The IMF's mission is to promote international monetary cooperation, facilitate the balanced growth of international trade, encourage economic growth, and discourage harmful policies like competitive exchange rate depreciation. These are crucially important functions to support the U.S. and global economies. Instead, the IMF has suffered from mission creep. The IMF was once unwavering in its mission of promoting global monetary cooperation and financial stability. Now it devotes disproportionate time and resources to work on climate change, gender, and social issues. These issues are not the IMF's mission. And the IMF's focus in these areas is crowding out its work on critical macroeconomic issues. The IMF must be a brutal truth teller and not just to some members. Today, the IMF has been whistling past the graveyard. Its 2024 external sector report was entitled Imbalances Receding. This Pollyannish outlook is symptomatic of an institution more dedicated to preserving the status quo than answering the hard questions.
The United States is getting it so right on pretty much everything at this stage of the game. And here we are in Canada, still allowing boys to play on girls' teams because of these liberals and this ideology. It's amazing to me. Look at this story here. What did we say was going to happen? Who would you rather partner with, the United States or China? This came from CTV News. China says It wants to partner with Canada to push back against American bullying. These are the only two countries who have fought back with counter tariffs against the United States. Everybody else has not, and they're being rewarded for that. China's ambassador says Beijing is offering to form a partnership with Canada to push back against American bullying, suggesting the two countries could rally other nations to stop Washington from undermining global rules. You think Mark Carney would bite at that? Oh, yeah. In the debates last week, what did he say? He said, I think China is the biggest threat to Canada. It was just words. His company, Brookfield Asset Management, has got a $250 million loan to pay back to China. Maybe he had to call the chairman over there and say, look, I'm going to say you're the biggest threat tonight on the debate. I hope you don't mind, but I have to say that right now because people are kind of catching on that you guys are running us. Okay? Yeah, whatever. The Chinese ambassador, Wang Di, told the Canadian press in a wide-ranging interview, we want to avoid the situation where humanity is brought back to a world of the law of the jungle again. What is China doing with the Uyghurs if you want to talk about law of the jungle? China is Canada's opportunity, not Canada's threat. I am amazed that they actually came out and did this publicly. Amazed. And people are still not cluing in. They're still not cluing in. There are some good signs. The polls are tightening. Liberal candidates are crapping the bed every single day. This is Rob Grossi. I think he's a candidate running in the Toronto area. He's running in the GTA. And they had a debate, a riding debate the other night. And there was a bunch of people in there, a bunch of people from the riding. They went to watch the debate, see who they were going to vote for. And watch what happened here.
Do you really believe that Pierre Poilievre can lead this country with what you've seen? Well, good for you, country, with what you've seen. Do you believe that Pierre Poilievre can lead this country with what you've seen?
Yes.
Well, good for you. I'm ready, I'm willing, and I'm capable of going to Ottawa to represent your interests.
I wonder. That was a Toronto riding, usually painted red every election, whether the Liberals win or lose. But remember those by-elections from last summer in Toronto and Montreal? The Liberals lost both of them. I think this Mark Carney thing is a mirage. Yeah, I'm scared still. But it's in my heart and in my stomach that this is just a mirage. I mean, look at this. This is Michelle Corfield. She's running for the Liberals on Vancouver Island in the riding of Nanaimo Ladysmith. And watch her talk about how the government needs to own the media, just like a bank. This is incredibly stupid. But then again, remember, these Liberals, they live in a completely different world. They have a completely different perspective on things.
Talk to as many people as you can. Talk about what's important to Canadians. Listen to what's important to Canadians. Well, you can't do that if we're squishing the media out. We've got to open our arms and enable that to happen. But what I will say is we need the CBC. We need the CBC. When your sovereignty of your country is at stake and you're fighting a war, an economic war, you need your country to have its own media. Just like its own bank, we need to have control over the resources that inform our people, and we as Canadians need to stand up and protect that right.
We got to play that again. Listen to what she says. Listen to what she says explicitly.
Enable that to happen. But what I will say is we need the CBC. We need the CBC. When your sovereignty of your country is at stake and you're fighting a war, an economic war, you need your country to have its own media. Just like its own bank, we need to have...
You need your country to have its own media. Is she talking about the country in and of itself, or is she talking about the government?
Have control over the resources that inform our people, and
we need to have control over the resources that inform our people. Wow.
Canadians need to stand up and protect that right.
What do they call that in 1984? The Truth Commission? The Commission of Truth? Something like that. Crazy. You know, countries are issuing travel warnings against the United States. Canada has issued a travel warning against the United States. Other countries are. Now, what is this? These countries, these Marxist countries, are trying to form some kind of alliance in collusion together to strip Americans of tourism dollars. That's in my opinion. But again, that's selling fear. America is no more dangerous today than it was a year ago when Joe Biden was president. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt responded to growing international concerns over travel to U.S. as more countries issue updated travel advisories in response to Trump's immigration and transgender rights policies. So if you're one of the 0.01% and you're a man who dresses up as a woman or vice versa, then maybe you should think twice. Leavitt assured reporters that the U.S. remains a desirable destination, citing improved safety compared to the previous administration. So how many countries, or which countries, let's just ask which countries have put out travel advisories to the United States? Well, multiple Nordic countries. Canada updated its advice, but noted risk of travel was low. Well, thank you for being honest. Canada, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom. Interesting. Oh, there's also something else that the Democrats down there are freaking out about. The Trump store has put out Trump 2028 hats on sale in a third term tease. Rewrite the rules, it says on the back of the hat. The American 22nd Amendment says that nobody can serve as president for more than 2 terms. And that was made law, I think, in 1951. It was introduced in 1947 and made law finally in 1951. So, yeah, I think they're just throwing this out there to anger people and maybe to make a little bit of money. Or maybe it's not Donald Trump who will be running in 2028. Maybe it's Donald Trump Jr. Or maybe Ivanka, another Trump, will run for president in 2028. Oh, and one more thing before we let you go tonight and move to the extension on shadowdavis.com for you all access Nighthawks. And by the way, again, we do have a winner of the Shadow at Night cap or Shadow at Night mug. And we'll announce that in the first 5 minutes of the extension tonight. And yeah, it'll be our third winner. I'm very excited. I love giving stuff away. So I'll be announcing the winner in the first 5 minutes. And only people who are all access members, obviously, at shadowdavis.com are eligible to win this. You can become one. You can join the club. We got a great group of people back there, too. I mean, if you come back there and become part of that group, you're going to fit right in. You're going to love it. They are very welcoming, smart people as well. And we do cover a lot of very, very interesting and verboten topics in there, things I could never, ever talk about on YouTube or Facebook. That's one of the reasons that the website exists, so we can go deep on certain things. Apparently, they want to block out the sun in the UK, and the government is funding this. So there's a guy called Dane Wigginton, and Dane Wigginton runs a website, has for years. It's called geoengineeringwatch.org, and he appeared with Clayton Morris on Redacted earlier today. Watch this.
That the Telegraph is reporting this, the way the UK is ready to move on this, Dane, it sounds like this has never happened before and they're just going to try it for the first time. Do you call BS on that?
I do. That's exactly how they want it to sound, Clayton, so that they can pretend that might do this someday, when in fact these operations have been fully deployed since immediately after World War II. So they continue this grand facade, not just the UK, but also in the US, with what the US EPA head posted last week, that he's going to investigate the Make Sunsets group, as we discussed off air, two clowns from Silicon Valley that launched a few balloons. So they continue this grand facade, governments in both countries pretending this hasn't been ongoing for decades already, with catastrophic results manifesting worse by the day.
Dane Wigginton of Geoengineering.org. We'll have to get him on the show. Talk about these chemtrails. It's something I haven't really talked about at length on this show, but it's undeniable. I mean, look up in the sky. Not every day, but on a given day, you can see, and there's videos of it all over the place as well. I'm sure you guys have seen. I mean, like, you know, not really high altitude aircraft spewing a line of whatever. And then that line starts expanding. Or maybe it's 5 lines and maybe they're crossing each other. And then they start to expand and eventually it's overcast over your city or town, when it was previously a sunny day. What the hell is that? Geoengineering. And now they're finally admitting, quietly, of course, yeah, it's public knowledge, but they're not really hammering it too hard, that they're funding it. The UK is funding this because climate change. It'll slow down climate change if we block out the sun. And Bill Gates? Oh, yeah. Here. So when you talk to somebody about this, and I'm sure you've had discussions with friends about chemtrails. I mean, it's a very controversial topic, even in our circles, right? It's kind of like flat Earth. And if you bring it up, they're going to go, you're crazy. Like Chris Scott, our buddy over at the Whistle Stop Cafe. I mean, there was a big, long discussion he had, and I had too with him about chemtrails. He doesn't believe it. Well, now you can say, okay, well, look, I mean, the UK government is funding it. They're trying to block out the sun, and you can look it up anywhere. Go to Google, look it up, check it out for yourself. It's true. Now, what Dane Wigginton and other people have been saying, obviously, is that this has been going on since the end of World War II. What are you, crazy? That's it for the show tonight, you guys. I love you all. I appreciate you all. I will catch you on Monday night, 7 o'clock Central, for the election special. Again, there is no show tomorrow night. I'm taking a long weekend. I've got a friend coming into town I haven't seen in 13 years, and the only chance I have to see this friend is tomorrow night, where they move on to the next place they're going. So I'm looking forward to that very, very much, but it means I'm not going to be able to do a show. But Monday, we're going long, covering the entire election, 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever it takes, starting at 7 o'clock Central, so an hour early on Monday night. The extension is coming up on shadowdavis.com in a couple of minutes. All Access Nighthawks, I will see you there. The rest of you, I'll catch you Monday. Have a great weekend, and bye for now.